Hello, I'm Elaine Smith, the Artistic Director of the Clamour Theater Company. We are holding these creative conversations with playwrights, with actors, with directors, so that you can find out more about Clamour Theater and about the artists who work with us. So, welcome to this edition of a Clamour Creative Conversation. Today, we are joined by Deborah Yarchun, one of the playwrights for our third annual Playwrights Retreat, who's going to be bringing her play, Atlas the Lonely Gibbon. And so welcome, Deborah. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So it's great to have you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your bio, your background, things you like to do when you're not writing plays, that kind of thing.
Sure, yeah. So I was raised through an Air Force family, but I grew up a lot of different places, including New Jersey and Germany. Ultimately, we ended up in Austin, Texas. And so when people ask where I'm from, I claim Austin, Texas. It's where I was from fifth grade to the end of high school. It's where my family still is. And when I can visit them, which I haven't gotten to do this year, unfortunately, I do as often as I can. It's also where I started writing plays. So I feel like my writing and my playwriting is really rooted in Austin. I started writing plays in the seventh grade during a really isolated year. That's when I discovered playwriting. And I got really into it when I was young. I read across the shelf, and it was a secret thing I did. Was secretly writing plays. I didn't tell, I didn't share very many of them. But then it became not so secret because I entered a competition for a play I wrote with a friend, and we won. And we had a reading at the Kennedy Center when I was 14.
Oh
And then
my
I
goodness.
twice won the Young Playwrights Festival, which is a competition that was founded by Stephen Sondheim in New York City. They fly you up, and ultimately it culminated in an off-Broadway production for a play I'd written when I was 18. And then after undergrad, I spent some time in New York City. And then I spent some time in the Midwest. I did 3 years at the University of Iowa, where I studied playwriting for my MFA. And then afterwards, I had 2 consecutive Jerome fellowships at the Playwright Center in the Twin Cities, and then a semester in residence at Indiana University. So all in all, 6 years in the Midwest. It was a real gift. I really loved the Midwest. I returned to New York City afterwards, where I was a Dramatists Guild Foundation fellow. And subsequently, I'd been teaching playwriting to fourth graders through the Dramatists Guild Foundation's New Voices Teaching Artist Program. I really love teaching. And while I was in New York City, I was also gifted as a member of the Civilians R&D group. It was a real gift of that time where I focused on developing another recent project, Drive. As for hobbies, outside of writing, which is all consuming, and of course takes up a lot of time, and I've also been exploring TV writing, which is also very exciting right now. When I do get a break, and I haven't had one lately that very much, an art form that I like to do is called micrography. It's where you create images out of words, and it's a Jewish art form. Been doing that for a lot of years. This past year, I've been extremely politically active, and that worked out really well, fortunately. I was making a lot of calls. I was involved in weekly action meetings where we would get together via Zoom at a certain point during the pandemic and call our senators. I've also really gotten into making teas, very helpful this year, especially during these very stressful times. A good sleepy time tea I love is lavender, valerian, and calendula, chamomile, marshmallow root. I highly recommend that blend. And I love hiking in nature. I actually had a chance to do a lot of hiking this year, the Catskills, the woods of Virginia, and the Grand Canyon. And that's due in part to the fact that I've been on a bit of a nomadic romp during the pandemic. So I haven't really been based anywhere specifically. I am currently in California. The goal is probably to stay here for the next year and then be bi-coastal if we can swing that, and be in both New York and California ideally. It has been such an adventurous year. The short of it is that it's been a confluence of strange but really ultimately blessed events, starting with a fire that my partner and I had in our apartment last November. I had just moved in, and it sounds horrible, but it actually worked out really well because we had minimal damage to our belongings. He had renter's insurance, which our stuff is still in storage from that fire. We ended up subletting a couple places and traveling. I had a production in Texas. He had business in California, and we were planning on starting up a new place by subletting in New York. We had a sublet lined up for March 12th. in New York City. We learned on March 10th that sublet had bed bugs.
Oh no.
So
Yeah.
instead of being in a bed bug infested apartment being fumigated at the peak of the pandemic in New York City, we ended up in the woods of Woodstock. And as a result, we like gave up that sublet and have been every month or so moving to different Airbnbs and rural places with low case counts. So we've really been able to isolate during the pandemic and keep ourselves really safe. And that's why I've been able to do so many hikes and see so many beautiful places. And we made our way across the United States ultimately to where we're currently at, which is in Brentwood, where we're staying with friends who have a beautiful house, as you can see
I see.
from the background. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's been the story of the year. I've seen so many beautiful places like Peru, Vermont, Stowe, Vermont, Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, Easton, Pennsylvania, where we stayed on a horse farm, and Floyd,
Wow.
Virginia.
Yeah, it's amazing how, as difficult as this year has been, in some ways, it's been, it's opened a lot of windows and doors for some people here and there. So that's great that you were able
Yes,
to do all that.
I, yeah,
Yeah.
I joke angels in the form of bed bugs.
Yeah, that does sound not good. But at least it worked out well. So now the play that you're bringing to Clay and Water, Atlas the Lonely Gibbon. Tell us something about that without giving away too much to our audience, who we hope will come and hear it.
Sure. Yeah, so Atlas the Lonely Gibbon is, I call it a dark comedic thriller set in the future. And it focuses on this woman named Irene, whose job as a journalist has been downgraded to editing AI generated articles. And so she's going through this really rough time, especially with her marriage due to techno incompatibilities and other factors. And she's working from home while her apartment may be being targeted by hackers. And
Oh,
yeah, so dark comedy. And I've been thinking about this play for a lot of years. And really, the origin of this play is I had this when I was in the Twin Cities, very, uh, promising short-lived relationship, and it ended so badly.
oh,
And it made me think a lot about why relationships fail. Why do
hmm,
things not work out? And that stuck with me. And I knew it had to live in a place somewhere, not necessarily specific to that one, but in general, like just that experience of like, wow, that went poorly in the end. And we live and learn, but also in the past few years, I've been thinking about my relationship to technology and what's that relationship like, and how can that relationship fail, and how is new technology is going to affect us as a society. That's been really on my mind. I've been both fascinated and horrified by these new things coming out with artificial intelligence, and as everything's connected to the internet increasingly, like what is that going to mean for us? How does that leave us vulnerable? And
yes.
this, yes, that's sort of like where the play's rooted, and it tracks with my work. I love to tell intimate stories about isolated people. I love writing small cast plays, with the exception of, my play Drive has 6 characters. That was more of a challenge to myself to see, can I write more than like a 2 to 4 character play? And yeah, I love the connection that it creates between the audience and the characters when you just focus very intimately on those specific characters and their relationships. I think it connects us to them, and I think it's a really great opportunity as a create a theatrical story, because you are generating an entire world out of just a few people.
Right.
Um, yeah, yeah. And
I
I've
think that's
experienced a lot of
great.
anxiety in my life, and I know that sensation in my body really well, and I'm always interested in ways to replicate that on the stage, not in
Mm,
necessarily a bad way, but in that shared experience of a roller coaster where you all feel a little shaken up together.
yeah.
And so Atlas comes out of that impulse as well.
Okay. Well, artistically, I think that makes a lot of sense. And, certainly from a business standpoint, smaller cast plays often get done more often because we can afford to do them. So that's a smart business move too. Uh, so tell me a little bit, how did you hear? Do you remember how you heard about the retreat and why you decided to apply?
Yeah, I remember the exact moment I learned about the retreat. It was on official Playwrights of Facebook. Someone posted it. Maybe it was you, perhaps. And it was like, okay, well, that sounds interesting. And I was really looking for an opportunity to develop Atlas, and it's my newest play. I'm really excited about it. But the thing that really got me was in the comments for that post. All of these writers saying this was such a wonderful opportunity. I had such a great time. Apply, apply, apply. And Frankie Gonzalez gave it a really rave review in the comments, and Frankie enjoyed it because I had just done a retreat with him through the HBMG Foundation National Winter Retreat,
Okay.
and that's actually where I had written the very, very early nascent first draft of Atlas, and so it seems like a really great opportunity, and I'm really happy and excited to be a part of it this year.
Yes. Well, we're very grateful to Frankie and the other writers. This is our third year, and the two previous years were in person, of course, so they were a little bit different, but we had such great groups of people and they seem to really enjoy it, and they've been very positive about it. So that's really lovely. I'm really happy about that. So tell me what you're hoping to get out of the retreat. What
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to get to know the other writers. I find when I'm working in a retreat setting, I mean, whether virtually and in person, I'm sure it's similar. It's just the energy as everyone's collectively working on their projects that creates an event around revising, which makes it so much more fun. And also, I have specific things I'm exploring. It's still a relatively early draft. There's the motivations of the husband character David. I really want to get a little bit more specific. It should be nuanced. It should be complicated, but I don't want it to be confusing, and I don't want it to ultimately muddle what's at the core of the play. So I want to focus on his character, and then of course, Irene, the main character's response, and tracking that through the play,
right.
and getting deeper into the play in general.
Great. So now tell me, do you have a favorite play of your own? Maybe it doesn't have to have been produced. Maybe it has been produced. We've been joking with other playwrights about usually that means, whichever one you're working on right now.
It's
But
true.
but aside from that, is there one that sort of stands out as being really close to your heart?
I mean, I would say it's the same. It is the play you're currently working on. The one that's closer to your heart is the one that's also closest to your mind in some ways.
Sure.
And Atlas is currently that play, but also my play Drive, which I've recently worked on. And they're really companion plays, I think. They're dealing with very similar things in radically different ways. And so my play Drive focuses on a community of truckers in Iowa who lose their job to self-driving trucks and are forced to shift gears. It's very naturalistic. They both look at artificial intelligence and what technology is going to do to us as a society and how it could affect us. And then, of course, Atlas is the stark comedic thriller version of that story, but told very intimately.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to attend the online reading of Drive,
Thank you
and
so much.
I didn't know anything about the play before I saw it, and it really did strike me as it was very much in the same vein in terms of themes of how does artificial intelligence affect us, and I thought that was really interesting. So that's cool. I It'll be interesting to see how if you write another play in that same genre sort of or not,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Is it a trilogy? Or is it
is
just
it a
two?
trilogy or
I don't
not?
know. I don't know.
Yeah, no, we'll find out. I would be interested to find out. So now, aside from your own work, can you think of three plays that you've seen or read by other authors that you really like, and tell us what they are and what you like about them?
Sure, and I'm sure I can't possibly be the only writer who will come up with this answer because it's a very popular play, and a very popular play this year. But I've always loved One Flea Spare by Naomi Wallace. I think it's a beautiful play. It's set during the bubonic plague of 1665 with characters from different classes forced into quarantine together. There's extremely high stakes, and the power dynamics between the characters are constantly shifting in a really fascinating way. It's also about larger things like class issues, but it's told in this very human, intimate way.
Hmm.
So that play I often teach with. And then I'm going to cheat a little and complete two in the next answer. I really loved A Strange. I saw the Playwrights Rights and production of A Strange Loop by Michael R. Jackson,
Okay.
and there it was it's just such a theatrical experience to be in an audience, and like everybody just felt it in our bodies collectively, and it was coming from the raw honesty of that story in this singular voice telling this story about his own life very theatrically. I also Will Arbery's Here is the Fourth Turning. I didn't see in person, but I saw a Zoom reading of it, and that's also coming from a very human, raw, honest place, and looking at people he knows in his life. And I'm sure he conflated them into the different characters, but it felt very rooted in something true. And so plays written from a very particular perspective, I think are really great. And then third, if I can have a third, is
Sure.
third 3.5. I loved Indecent by Paula Vogel, and in general, Paula Vogel's work. She's a genius when it comes to structure. I also I teach using the Baltimore Waltz, It's a play that takes you on this journey where you kind of know from the beginning what's at the center of it, but you lose sight of it because you're having so much fun and you're just enjoying these characters. And then it hits you with how much grief and loss is at the center of it at the end, and this as you reawaken to what the play is really about. And I think that's just so beautifully constructed.
That's great. What's really interesting about this question to me is that, many of the plays I know that different playwrights have mentioned, but some of them I don't. And I'm like, okay, well, now I got a bigger, longer reading list of things I have to go look at. So that's great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today and letting our audience get to know something about you. We are all looking forward to working with you during the retreat, and we are really looking forward to hearing Atlas the Lonely Gibbon. It's going to be read at a date and time still to be determined, but it will be between Thursday, February 18th and Sunday, February 21st. The public reading of it will be. And so if you are watching this today, we encourage you to look at Clamour Theater Company's website at clamourtheater.org and check for the schedule, not to miss anything that we're doing. It's a wonderful lineup of writers and plays, and we're really excited about this year's retreat. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you for having me, and I'm also very excited about this retreat.
Great. Have a really good day.